All right. Oh, wait. Yes. Transition. That's transition noise. All right. I'm gonna jump topics here. I'm gonna jump to the next topic. The PlayStation Classic. We have talked about that several times here, and the damn thing isn't even out yet. The PlayStation Classic. They finally Star Wipe. They finally had a hands-on with the actual unit. From my understanding, it is confirmed to be the final production version of the unit. Gotta chug my coffee because it's getting cold. And then I know Kotaku wrote an article about it. I didn't notice if anybody else wrote an article about it. Clorox wipe. It is underwhelming to say the least. I don't know if anybody read the Kotaku article. Comes out next month, December 3rd. So we are less than a month away right now. It comes out December 3rd. I wasn't sure about it being final because the software just looks so bad. Mike, that's one of the many problems. Okay, so here's the issue. If you started showing it off to the people who are going to write articles about it, you better be showing them the final result. Don't be showing them something and then not tell them that it's not the final version. Yes, if you are going to show them, maybe you wanted to show them just the emulation, you could have said, okay, this is not the final product. This does not have all the features, but we wanted to show you the emulation. That would have been more acceptable. But apparently they did not say that. So it looks like this is going to be what is being used. There's no kind of graphic smoothing. There's nothing there, which is a plus and a minus. I mean, some games looked muddy. You are talking the early days of 3D here. So some games do look kind of muddy and hideous and jaggedy edges. And, when jaggedy edges merge with jaggedy edges, it doesn't make for a pretty sight. So there was nothing to ease up. Hey, Sally. There was nothing to ease up the graphics, to smooth out the graphics, to clean up anything. A lot of people don't mind that. A lot of people don't like that with 8 and 16-bit games. Most people will agree that they appreciate that for 3D games, for 32-bit. I mean, yeet out of here. Yeet! So there was nothing like that. There were no screen filters. There's none of that stuff. You know how the SNES Classic has the perfect pixel, which nobody uses, and then like the scanline filters and all of that. Apparently there's none of that. None of that in the game. Well, on the console itself. Save states. You are allowed one save state per game. If you use a save state, that's it. If you save over that save state, that's it. You cannot make multiples. The SNES Classic gives you 4 of them. Can we not with the juvenile dialect? The UI. If you guys have to go and see the pictures of it. The UI is as plain as can possibly be. It's like all the games are floating on like a blue background. There is nothing. There's no flair to it whatsoever, and not even flair. It's not even. It doesn't even seem complicated to do some of these things. A customizable background screen. You can pick a screen from a game, like something like that. Like it is as bare bones as you could possibly be. Yeah, and somebody said it. The emulator that it's running, I think, is the same emulator off of the PS3, which some people have argued is not a fantastic emulator. $720p. What? Dragoon Knight though, it's the PS Vita. Yeah, Dragoon Knight 720p. Elements, they are PS1 games, but I feel like there should be some sort of a little bit of, mind you, you are getting PS1 games which are a lot bigger in size, but they're also charging $100 for the system. Not 1080 in this age is kind of disgusting though. What did because the SNES Classic, obviously it's a different beast altogether, but what is that, 480p or something? Or they're not 1080p, are they? Basically, the PS Classic is a waste of money. I still don't know that it's a complete waste of money, but it's starting to seem more. People are sounding more and more justified when they say, I'm gonna cancel my pre-order. Believe. The PS1 Classic is not worth buying if one just wants to try it one yet. I'd wait and see. Unfortunately, at this point, I'd wait and see. Hopefully, they change some stuff. Hopefully, they add a few features. Hopefully, later on down the line, they release an analog controller. I really don't understand why they didn't release an analog controller. I think I would have paid the $100 if you put an analog controller, you put a decent list of games, and you only put one controller. I would have been fine with one controller. I'm not entirely sure how many games on there actually need two controllers. I would have been fine with one controller with the analog joystick, not even the DualShock joystick, just the analog joystick. There was that time period where they released an analog joystick with the dual sticks, but did not have the rumble in it yet. I would have been fine with that. N64 thingy. I did not hear about that. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't pay $100 for it. More like for, yeah, Mike, if they would have said $60 in the current state that it's in with the current games that it's in, I would have said, all right, that's pretty awesome. Like even with a somewhat shoddy list of games, that would be worth it. But we've talked about the list of games here and the fact that I just don't like them. The fact that there's no analog controller, which limits certain games anyway. I just feel that I think the most redeeming quality, the most redeeming possibility about this system right now lies in the fact in whether or not you'll be able to hack it very easily and put games on it. That's it. I think that is the only thing that will save this system. The problem is that with these games being as large as they are as file size wise, unless they put a lot of memory on there, you might not be able to fit a lot of games on there. This might be you can remove the 20 games and put 20 of your own, but you would if you want to change them, then you would have to rework the whole thing, which would actually still work if the emulation works fair and it works fine enough and you've got good ISOs. That would actually work well enough for someone like me, for a streamer, for somebody who, because one of the biggest features about this system is that it puts PS1 games very easily out on HDMI. Because if you're a retro game streamer, sometimes that can be kind of a challenge. Especially if you have like a newer Elgato, all they take is HDMI, so it becomes a more, you have to get an older capture card, or you got to figure something out. So the fact that you would now have PS1 games very, very easily through HDMI is a fantastic feature for a lot of people. So even if the initial games aren't on there, if you have the ability to change those games on there, I think people would be fine with it. Truth be told, I honestly think they should have done the same thing that I thought they should have done with the NES and SNES Classic, which is that it hooks up to the internet, it hooks into your PlayStation account, I forget what their accounts are called, and when you buy PS1 games or PS1 games on your PS3, you can transfer them over to the PS Classic. Why not just sell the PS Classic for $20-$30 and then tell people to go onto the PlayStation Store and buy their own games to put on there. Buy them for $5 a piece, and now you can create, rather than being stuck with the 20 games that they give you, some of which are just not really entertaining at all, or at the very least, definitely not classics. Why not give them the chance to do it by themselves? That's kind of what I wanted for the SNES and NES Classic. I like the idea of being able to go to the Virtual Console store, buy your retro games and put them on your system, but then you can hook up your SNES Classic and take those SNES games and put them on the system, and now you choose what games go on there. I thought that would have been much more interesting. Did they announce all the other games? Ace Fox, we did a video about that. We talked about all those games, and they were not impressive. I heard the games are actually a mix of PAL and NTSC versions. Some will be using the European version. Some are actually using the European version. Final Fantasy VII, I know, is using the European version. Very odd. It's 2018, almost 2019, and you release this mess. Yeah, I'm waiting. Ryan, I'm waiting for the petitions to cancel it. So supposedly Nintendo had 19 N64 games that they registered manuals for. These games were Mario 64, Mario Tennis. All right, hold on. I'm going to read this list because I'm assuming what we think is that these games are going to be N64 classic games. So let's read this list as if that's what it's going to be. Let's see how it stacks up to the PlayStation Classic. Mario 64, amazing. Mario Tennis, amazing. Mario Kart, amazing. Mario Golf, amazing. Mario Party 2, I was not a Mario Party 2 player, so somebody can tell me if Mario Party 2 was the best one or not. Zelda Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Bomberman 64, Wave Race 64, 1080, Kirby 64, Yoshi Story, Paper Mario, Star Fox, Sin and Punishment, F-Zero X, Excitebike 64, Pokemon Snap, and Donkey Kong 64. Suave, if that is the list of games on the N64 Classic, I will be there day one, because that is a great list of games. That is a large list of games that when you listen to, you say N64 Classics. Because that was my biggest problem. We talked about it here. My biggest problem with the games on the PlayStation Classic list is that they don't sound like PlayStation Classics. I don't think of the PlayStation when you say Rainbow Six. I don't think of the PlayStation when you say Mr. Driller. Great game, but I don't think of it as a PlayStation Classic. That list of games, if that's the list, those games, almost 100% of those games, I say N64. Wow, actually, yeah, I mean, the furthest you can get from saying N64 with those games is Star Fox. Every one of those games screams Nintendo 64. Donkey Kong 64, though. Sin and Punishment. I know, I'm excited for... if that's an accurate list, I'm excited for Sin and Punishment. Only thing that misses, in my opinion, is Super Smash 64. Yeah, I'm surprised that Smash isn't on there. That would be a little weird if that's not on there. Yeah, that would be perfect. It Lost Subject, you're absolutely right. It does almost sound a little too perfect. Here's the problem. They registered those manuals. There's no reason that those games won't come to the Nintendo Switch. So we don't know. We just don't know. I played Sin and Punishment on emulator once. Elements, I played a physical cart of that when it first came out. The audio was in English for some reason. I played a physical cart when that came out. We had a guy that collected Japanese N64. Actually, no, I'm sorry. He collected treasure games. So he had that, and then he had Bangai-O when that first came out. Sin and Punishment was... I'll be honest, for us, it was a little easy. We did beat Sin and Punishment the first day that we played it. It was probably about 4 or 5 hours after we started playing it that we beat it. but it was still a phenomenal game. There anything like GameCube and PS2 ISO files and the file for each game size on the system at least 1 gig each. Okay. Virtual Console release is the same. Yeah, the sequel is also superb. I never played the sequel. I need to play the sequel. PS1 is 700 megs. N64 is about 132 megs. Yeah, 152 megs. Yeah, they can't do. That's why there are certain games that, and when we talked about it here, we realized that there were a lot of games. You know, GoldenEye, I think that belongs to Rare now, so we knew that was probably not going to happen. We thought Banjo 1 and 2 would be interesting, but we figured that wasn't going to happen. We were even kind of curious about DK64. At the time, like we were just kind of curious about it. But yeah, I think if that's the list, that's an amazing list. I'm a little confused as to, and again, like I said, I wasn't a player of those games. So I'm a little confused as to why Mario Party 2 and not the other ones, not 1 and 3. So I would be interested to find out, you know, did they do some kind of polling and find out that Mario 2 was the favorite? Did it have the most games? So they figured they'd release the one with the most games? Like, $100 is still way too much for the PS Classic because I can buy a 1 terabyte external hard drive for $120. Well, remember, Sean, we've talked about that. If you are the kind of person who can go out, who knows how to go out and buy a hard drive and do a RetroPie and all that stuff, or knows how to emulate all these games, or has a PS3 and like, if you're any one of those people, then the PlayStation Classic isn't marketed to you. The PlayStation Classic is these classic systems in general. First and foremost, their market is people who have gotten out of video games and don't have an easy way to play video games anymore. It's meant for you to go to the store, buy them, hook it to your TV. People who know how to do, who can load up a RetroPie blindfolded, it's not really marketed towards them. That's always my biggest argument for that stuff. Whenever people say that stuff, and it's fine to say it. I don't mean that. I don't like the idea coming off as like, well, then you're an idiot. Like, I like to remind people that if you have the ability and the knowledge to do that, then the device is not marketed towards you. DK64, because even though it was made by Rare, it's still it's still a primary Nintendo property. It still came out on a Nintendo console, so I figure that's why they could. But then that argument could also be said about GoldenEye. So it would be a question of who owns what when. Classic systems are not marketed to. Yeah, they're not marketed to. They are more marketed to casual gamers and nostalgia. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Mr. Sonic. Yeah, that's who they're marketed to. So that's always an important thing to understand. The problem is, in getting back to the PlayStation Classic, even though the idea might be to sell the PlayStation Classic to people who have gotten out of gaming, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't have these extra features, that they shouldn't have these multiple save files and screen filters. There's no like scan line filters or anything like that. Like, it is as bare bones as it can possibly be. I get that it's a cash grab, and I said this on Twitter. I get that it's a cash grab. But don't you think you would grab more cash if you made a high quality system that everyone's going to want? That just seems, and they're going to want for a long period of time. You know, people are going to buy the hell out of this thing when it first comes out. And then if the game selection is crappy, if the emulation is terrible, if you can't add games to it, if there's no redeeming qualities whatsoever, it's going to go on everybody's shelf, and that's going to be it. And you're never going to sell anymore. If you make a high quality system with relative, even if you do it with mediocre games, which is what they're doing, and you can add games to it, it's got extra features, there's some way to add features later on. If you do all of that stuff, people will want to buy this system for years. The Super Nintendo Classic is going to sell for years. Even when the nostalgia bunch has had their fun, I think new nostalgia bunches are going to pop up. I think new people that are getting into retro games are going to look at the NES and SNES Classic and say, "Oh, this is actually a great way to get into these." Because not only do I like the games that are on here and they're timeless games, I can add more games. Like the features of the unit itself make it worthwhile for people to buy years down the line. Make the most money for the least amount of effort. Capitalism. Yeah, bruh. But you'd make more money if you put in more effort. That just seems obvious. Go to the mom release Diddy Kong Racing DS as an N64 game. I don't know. No, you know what, Suave? I'll tell you what I would take. It would be a gateway drug, so to speak. I'll tell you what I would take on the N64. Animal Forest. Imagine releasing the N64 Classic with that lineup of games that was listed there, and then saying as a surprise game for the first time ever in the U.S., translated for the U.S., we're putting Animal Forest on there.
Your ideas are interesting to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.
Thank you, Anime, for that perfectly timed announcement. Not only would that be amazing, not only would Animal Crossing fans pee their pants, the talk of it would actually start up interest in the new Animal Crossing game. Animal Forest is a prequel to Animal Forest. Animal Crossing was being developed on the N64, and a similar version, I think it was significantly toned down, or at least just toned down, came out on the N64 in Japan. The first Animal Crossing we got here was the GameCube, but there was a version before it that came out on the N64 in Japan. If you translate that and release it here on the N64 Classic, people will lose their minds. If you put it on the N64 Classic along with that list of games that we read off, holy crap. The world would explode in love of the N64. Apparently Sakurai destroyed Smash players in his own game. Competitive Smash players in his own game. I think that would be amazing. I don't know, but now we're getting too excited. But I'll tell you what, at least the N64 Classic is going to have screen filters and a cool, arguably a cool controller. I like the N64 controller. I know everybody hates the N64 controller. I like the controller. I hate when people complain about it, saying, "Oh, well, 3 prongs. I don't have 3 hands." You literally never played a game using all 3 prongs of the controller at once. I'll tell you what. Oh wait. I've got a King of the Hill sound effect.
That's my purse. I don't know you.
That's me trying to get the last N64 Classic at the store.